Right, can I next ask Dr. Leslie McCurt and Michael Frawley from MOTAT? Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Eina iwi I hui hui nei, kia ora tātou katoa. Thank you for this opportunity to present to the Finance and Performance Committee. And I'd like to introduce Michael Frawley, the Chief Executive of MOTAT, and also acknowledge the presence of Vern Walsh, who's one of our board members. Vern? Thank you. Unfortunately, our Deputy Chair, Mike Spraggan, was unable to be present today and wishes his apologies to be tendered. As this is MOTAT's first presentation to this committee, unlike the War Memorial Museum, we would like to take this opportunity to update you on MOTAT, what we have been doing and what we are planning to do, and also how that fits in with the Auckland plan. I'm going to ask Michael to start with some of that contextual background, which I think is important for this committee as our first presentation to you, and then I'm going to follow on talking about our MOTAT's primary objectives and also how, in fact, we do already but also have future intentions for greater alignment with the Auckland plan. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I would like to add my thanks to Leslie's. This is a fantastic opportunity for MOTAT. I would hazard a guess that a number of the councillors and in particular the members of this committee will have some questions about MOTAT given its history, and like I say, we do welcome this opportunity. It's always a hard act to follow behind Roy and the War Memorial Museum, but we will give it our best shot. I will start by I think to understand where MOTAT is currently, you have to understand a bit of the museum's history. So I would ask you for your indulgence while I take us back to 1964 and work our way forward. Basically, MOTAT was started in 1964 by a passionate group of volunteers. That evolved over time into the MOTAT Society that effectively ran the museum until the late 90s. In March 2000, the MOTAT Act was passed, and the effect of that act was to transfer the museum's assets, the collection, the sites, from the MOTAT Society to MOTAT, which is a statutory entity. The other effect of the Act was to create the board, of which Leslie is the chair. It created the Chief Executive Officer function, and it outlined the various objectives of the museum, which I will touch on shortly, but it also set up the mechanism for funding the museum under the levy process, which will start in March. The main objective under the Act for the museum is the preservation and display of transport and technology and its impact, or the impact that it had and the impact it has on Auckland and New Zealand. The museum, just for those, and I suspect everybody is familiar with it, the museum is located on two sites. The first site is at Miola Road, which is where our aviation display collection is, the rail collection and the military vehicles are, and on Great North Road, which is where the Heritage Pump House and the engineers' cottages. The total site is 13 hectares, and I think it's fair to say that one of the things that we're particularly proud of, apart from the Heritage Pump House, is the Aviation Display Hall, which we funded through various sources and was opened in 2011 in time for the World Cup. A large number of the Auckland community have been to MOTAT in some shape or form. I suspect most, if not all, of the people in this room have been there either as a child or have taken their children there or have taken their grandchildren there over the last 51 years. Last year, the museum attracted 249,000 people, and we had 28,000 children through our Learning Outside the Classroom and early education programs, and we are looking, and you'll hear later, how we're looking at expanding those programs to cover a wider age group. Our Give and You Shall Receive and Christmas Light promotion, which we've been running for the last few years over the 9 days leading up to Christmas, had 21,000 visitors. It raised $78,000, which we used to buy over 6,500 presents, and we gave those presents to Variety and City Mission for distribution to children who wouldn't normally get them. Slightly outside the statutory objectives of the museum, but it is part of our goal to give back to the community. Our annual budget is approximately 14 million, of which 12 million comes from the council and the other 2 million comes from admissions, retail sales and functions, and we're looking to obviously increase the financial amount that we generate ourselves going forward. Just to give you a snapshot of the MOTAT team, we have 80 full-time and part-time employees, and at the current time we estimate, but we don't know for sure, that we have around about 220 volunteers, 120 of which are active on a regular basis inside the museum, and we're trying to get a handle on exactly how many volunteers we have, and right as I speak. Just reflecting on the legacy issues that we've faced, I think it's fair to say that MOTAT has had more than its fair share of internal and external disagreements, a number of which have been played out in the public arena, particularly through the newspapers. Those disputes obviously have had a detrimental effect on the reputation of the museum, and obviously we've been trying to address that going forward. I suppose where that first started was the board in 2012 came to the conclusion that the museum needed to evolve as the Auckland War Memorial Museum had between 2000 and 2011, and you've heard from Roy and William the wonderful things that that museum has done, and when you reflect back from where they've come from, we're hoping that we will be able to emanate that success going forward. The first step in improving that was that the board engaged Dame Cheryl Sutherland and Tim Walker to undertake a report on why the museum was not hitting its full potential and what could be done about it. The report is confidential. That is not because it contains anything that we are not shy about sharing. It's just that Dame Cheryl Sutherland, when she undertook the report, undertook to those giving her feedback that their feedback would be confidential, and the report itself identifies the people in question and some of their comments. So if that report came into the public forum from Dame Cheryl Sutherland's and indeed the museum's point of view, that would be a breach of trust. And that is why, if everybody wonders why we're so defensive about the confidentiality of that report, that's the main driver behind it. What I can share with you, which I have discussed with Dame Cheryl, is the main points that were identified in that report. She identified 4 fundamental issues, and I will read them out because these are the words that I've got from her. The museum lacked a clear strategy, which meant that there was no overall plan to direct the museum's, the employees, the volunteers and the stakeholders' activities. The museum's management structure at all levels, that's from the board down to the volunteer areas, was ineffective and dysfunctional. There was a poor governance at the board level, and the museum, if it kept operating the way it was and it kept the exhibitions they were the way it has been, would have limited appeal. Basically, the conclusion she came to was that it was sort of stuck in a 70s, 80s time warp. Dame Cheryl concluded that MOTAT needed to develop a bold strategic future where the museum provided social, educational, cultural and economic value to the Auckland community, and was an integral part of the Western Springs precinct. She also concluded that the board needed to focus on good governance and act in the best interests of the museum and the Auckland community as a whole, rather than the bodies that appointed it. I was brought in February 2013 to address the issues outlined in the Dame Cheryl report, and a new board, which is chaired by Leslie, was appointed in October 2013. The board and I then worked with Dame Cheryl, the MOTAT's employees and volunteers, our stakeholders, on the development of a strategy that was designed to move the museum from being a collection of things, albeit some of them move, to a light bulb institution. And when we're talking about a light bulb institution, and I was doing a presentation to the Waitemata local board yesterday, I used the example of Willie E. Coyote. When he's trying to work out how to invent something to wipe out Roadrunner, he has a light bulb go on. Effectively, what we're trying to do is when you come to the museum, you leave there with your head exploding with ideas. Well, hopefully not exploding in the practical sense. Our new strategy and the associated structures, which we developed in accordance with Strategic Pay's mapping process, were launched on the 1st of July last year, and all the key roles were appointed by November. So we're effectively geared up to implement the strategy. The strategy can be summarised in one simple statement, which is reflected in our vision. Our strategy is to use our existing heritage collection, and contrary to some of the news reports, we're not advocating getting rid of the trams and the rail things, etc., but actually using them in a slightly different way. And we've overlaid that with a focus on Kiwi ingenuity and technology and innovation. And the idea is to show that in a creative, interactive and hands-on way that inspires our visitors so that they go on to become the innovators of the future. We wanted to focus on Kiwi ingenuity in particular because we concluded, and we being Dame Cheryl, the board, everybody who was looking at this, that the number 8 wire approach is not that well known by the new generation. It's something that we're familiar with from the 50s and 60s, that famous Kiwi adaptability, but it seems to be lost in translation. Yet, that same concept's evolved to the stage where New Zealand are no longer adapting, but they're innovators in their own right and leading the world. So we identified an opportunity for the museum to tell that story, both past, present and future, and to do it in a way that we can make the visitors to the museum proud to be Kiwis and actually to go out and give it a go as their forefathers had. I think the good illustration of the strategy is in this photograph which we put up here. I was going to try and describe what I was talking about, but luckily I think we were given a bit of an indulgence to put this up. What you have here is Shane, and Shane is holding a penny farthing that was designed 150 years ago. In front of Shane is a yike bike which is designed by Grant Ryan in Wellington. You can see the striking similarity between the two. The one at the back works because it wobbles like a gyro, and the one in the front doesn't wobble at all because it's got massive industrial gyros in it. We have 2 yike bikes at the museum, one behind a traditional glass case which tells the story of Grant Ryan, and eventually we will be dismantling it so people can see all the bits. But the second one, the black one there, we actually have it ridden around the museum. So Shane will ride his penny farthing, and then he will go on the yike bike. And he has a sort of Pied Piper effect on children. They run after him and they start the debate as to which one do you prefer, how does it work, and why don't you fall off it and smash your face into the pavement. But that, I think, is a fantastic example of the technology in action. Moving swiftly on, because I'm told that we're getting short of time, but that's okay. Our first exhibition under the new strategy, Welcome to the Machine, opened in September 2014, and we did invite the councillors to come along to that. Basically, it received positive feedback. The exhibition is based on 7 basic machines and how you take them and combine them to make more complex machines. The interesting thing about this exhibition is that we have incorporated te reo into it for the first time in the museum's history, and we have also got tangata whenua technology in there. So we are trying to bring that biculturalism into the museum. We use the development of our strategy and our development plan, which I will touch on briefly in a moment, to engage with our neighbours in the Western Spring precinct, local iwi, starting with Ngāti Whātua, and the other major arts, heritage and learning institutions in Auckland. And you've heard from Roy how we are engaged with discussions not only with the War Memorial Museum but also the Voyager. The board has been focusing on governance, and Regional Facilities Auckland and the Motat Society have agreed a protocol for the appointment of board members going forward, where the board members will have the requisite skills that the museum needs going forward, and they are not going to be telling the people who appointed them, so as to remove the constituency effect that has been one of the factors that has been destabilising things in the past. Looking forward, we have taken steps with the Council's assistance to reduce our impact on the environment, water harvesting, power usage and other things. One of the major challenges we face is our buildings and infrastructure. I don't think it's an understatement to say that most of our buildings are coming to the end of their design life, and the museum, no matter how fantastic our exhibitions, when you visit the place, it looks tired. So what we have done to address that, we have engaged Becca, who have prepared an asset management plan so that we can identify what we need to do with the buildings to keep them going. And we have also engaged, we did engage Sir Ian Affield to help us with a development plan whereby we could develop a museum environment that was stimulating for our visitors and consistent with the vision where we wanted to go. This process, particularly the development plan one, we used to engage with our neighbours in the Western Springs precinct, because it's not just about Motat, it's about the other institutions in that area, including Western Springs Stadium, the zoo, TAPAC and the various schools in the area. And we have found that using this development plan as a catalyst for those discussions has been very beneficial to everybody. And included in that plan are issues of how do we get people to and from not just Motat, but the zoo and other things. Both plans are broken down into small projects so that we can, if we can over time, do it off our own resources. But obviously, if we can attract corporate sponsors and other capital investment, we can accelerate that process. And we are also working on a number of outreach programs to take the museum experience beyond its boundaries, for example, digital initiatives. And we're also working on a number of initiatives to expand our volunteer base so as to attract a wider range of volunteers by gender, age group, skill set and culture. And the initial indications is that initiative is working very well. On that note, I am now going to hand over to Leslie to summarise and also to sort of outline what we're doing and how that aligns with the Auckland plan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. And Madam Chair, yes, I've just got 2 things I'd like to speak to as we finish. The first is just to remind you what our primary objectives are. Our focus going forward is fundamentally to improve the visitor experience and thereby increase not only the number of people who come to Motat, but the number of times that they do so in any one year. We want to make Motat a must-experience venue that Auckland can be proud of. We believe we must be more relevant to the needs of Aucklanders now and into the future. And secondly, we're aiming to increase our own revenues and other corporate and sponsorship to the museum That will enable us to push the boundaries with our exhibitions, our learning programs, and also help with the implementation of our development plan, and which we're calling the Athfield Plan, because Sir Ian Athfield worked on that with us for the past more than 12 months, and also provide the opportunity to undertake major conservation and restoration projects. Another focus and primary objective of the board is to continue to focus on good governance and the prudent management of the museum and its collection, and to ensure that we do fulfil all of our statutory objectives. And lastly, I'd like to speak to the way in which we are already, but also planning to do more so in the future, align with the Auckland Plan and the draft Arts and Culture Strategy. As Michael's explained, our goal is to provide Auckland with a fun and stimulating environment that encourages debate, learning, innovation, and therefore play our part in making Auckland the most livable city. By making MOTAT the must-experience venue in Auckland, or one of them, we are aiming to encourage visitors to the region to stay in the city, and also looking to our Western Springs precinct partners to develop greater synergies with them, the zoo, the park, others, so that that becomes a destination for people to not just come and visit one institution, but to maybe visit many. And of course we have got the tram that connects both our two sites and also with the zoo. We aim to develop opportunities for young people to learn, innovate and develop skills, and through those initiatives taking steps to promote the wellbeing of society and to observe and incorporate Māori culture and technology where we can, and celebrate the fact that we are a bicultural institution with a commitment to the Treaty of Waitangi. We believe we are embracing the spirit of the Arts and Culture Strategy by incorporating both art and te reo into the museum so that that can be experienced by our visitors. This is an exciting time for the museum as we lay the foundations for a more sustainable future. Having said that, I think you can sense that we're not out of the woods yet. But we would particularly like to thank both the Auckland Council and Regional Facilities Auckland for their ongoing support and encouragement. We have received very strong affirmation of both our strategic direction and our development plan from Regional Facilities Auckland. They've been affirming and encouraging us in that, as well as encouraging us to improve our financial independence and therefore our sustainability as an institution. And we are very grateful to them and their board for the interest that they have shown on behalf of Auckland Council in MOTAT's issues, problems, challenges, but most importantly, our opportunities. Kia ora tātou.
Thank you very much. And as one of those who probably did go as a child, was taken as a child, took my children and my grandchildren, I'm very interested to hear the future and how it's going to work out. Councillor Crum.
Thank you, and thanks for your time and for being here this morning. Can you just highlight a few other bullet points for me in the manner in which and the ways in which RFA have been helpful to you? You did mention specific board appointment support or help from them. So from our perspective, well, from mine, it would be helpful to just a little bit more bullet point detail on RFA's help,
Right.
especially in light of findings from the report.